Right. Let's jump right in. As a senior security researcher participating in this coordinated vulnerability disclosure, my number one priority today is to make absolutely sure you grasp the critical severity of what we're looking at. You're watching a Code Ninja security advisory, and we are tracking CVE 2026-8398. This is a massive supply chain attack that totally compromised the official, digitally signed Windows installers for DAEMON Tools Lite. The entire goal of this disclosure is to get you immediate mitigation strategies and basically force a vendor patch across every affected network. Look, this isn't a drill. We're dealing with an active compromise of trusted infrastructure, and we've got to lock down the perimeter right now. A 9.3. That's the CVSS version 4.0 severity score stamped onto this vulnerability, which places it firmly in the absolute critical threat category. And just to put that into perspective for you, if we look at the older CVSS 3.1 scale, the score is actually even higher. It practically maxes out at a 9.8 out of 10. We aren't talking about some theoretical bug or a neat little proof of concept in an isolated lab environment. No way. We're talking about an active, network-based attack vector that has a terrifyingly low complexity. It requires absolutely zero user interaction beyond just running the standard trusted software installation. Okay, let's dive into this timeline so we can map out our exact threat window. The attack officially commenced on April 8, 2026. That's when threat actors managed to gain unauthorized access directly into the vendor's distribution infrastructure. They were literally serving up this malware straight from the legitimate DAEMON website until May 5th, which is when the vendor finally pushed a clean fix. But the urgency went completely off the charts on May 27th when CISA added this to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. They slammed down a strict remediation deadline for covered federal systems by May 30th. I mean, if CISA is forcing a 72-hour patch window, you know this is an incredibly volatile situation.
Now hold up a second. Before we proceed to the technical teardown and mitigation protocols, I need to pause this briefing for a quick comms check. I've got to verify that this critical intelligence is actually reaching the defenders on the front lines who need it most.
Let's establish a secure communication link. First things first, hit subscribe to @cybertech79 and make sure you enable your notifications. In our line of work, getting real-time security intelligence isn't just a nice-to-have, it's an absolute perimeter defense necessity. Second, please go ahead and hit the like button on this explainer. I want you to consider that your formal ACK, your official acknowledgement of receipt for this critical intel. We really need to ensure the entire defensive community is perfectly synced up here.
All right, let's get into the mechanics of the deep dive. This specific vulnerability is classified as CWE 506, or Embedded Malicious Code. The attackers actually managed to breach AVB Disc Soft's build environment. So instead of trying to exploit some random flaw in the software's logic, they did something way stealthier. They implanted malicious backdoor code directly into the startup code that initializes the CRT environment of the software itself. Because it was compiled internally by the vendor, it carried the totally legitimate AVB Disc Soft code signing certificate. This essentially allowed these malicious installers to look completely trustworthy, bypassing traditional signature-based detection entirely.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where the attackers hid their payloads. They didn't just infect every single file, they were precise. They targeted 3 specific system binaries, sitting right there in the DAEMON Tools Lite installation directory. So if you're running scans on your systems today, you are specifically hunting for Trojanized versions of DTHelper.exe, DiscSoftBusServiceLite.exe, and DTShellHlp.exe. Whenever a user, or honestly even the system itself, launches any of those 3 executables, the hidden backdoor just silently spins up in a dedicated thread.
You need to audit your software inventory right now for these exact versions. The compromised builds, and yes, this includes the 12.5.1 free version, range exactly from 12.5.0 2421 through 12.5.0 2434. Those are the infected packages that were floating around between April and early May. You've got to contrast that immediately with the clean, validated build released by the vendor, which is version 12.6.0 2445. Listen, if you can't confirm your exact version number for sure, you absolutely must assume your environment is compromised. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the automated collection once that backdoor goes live. It immediately turns into a massive information vacuum. It scoops up your host name, grabs your MAC addresses, and completely maps out your running processes and software stack. Then it ships all that intel off to an attacker-controlled server. In return, the server can execute arbitrary commands right through cmd.exe.
This lets the attackers drop secondary payloads, like these really nasty minimalistic backdoors, straight into your environment without tripping any traditional alarms. Let's move to how this translates into real-world business risk. The attackers weren't just casting a wide net here. They prioritized cyber espionage and lateral movement in some highly sensitive, specific sectors. We're talking retail, manufacturing, government, and scientific organizations. They are leveraging this initial foothold to map out engineering systems, siphon off proprietary data, and plant persistent backdoors deep, deep within these specific supply chains. The potential for financial and operational damage here is just staggering. But the absolute highest, most critical risk, it exists right on your technician laptops and privileged admin workstations. Look, a compromised free utility sitting on a standard home PC is definitely bad, but on an admin workstation, it is catastrophic. If this software is chilling on a machine that has access to hosting panels, RMM tools, VPNs, or cloud dashboards, the blast radius suddenly exposes entire customer networks. Attackers can use this trusted foothold to deploy code, issue new certificates, or completely hijack source control accounts. All right, if you're on the network defense team, pay attention, because here is your immediate action item. You must implement firewall blocks for these specific command and control indicators right now. The malware sends GET requests to a sneaky typo-squatted domain, env-check.daemontools.cc. It also reaches out directly to the IP address 38.180.107.76. If you comb through your logs dating back to April 8th and spot any outbound connections or DNS requests for these indicators, you have an active breach and you must isolate those systems immediately. So, the crucial point here is execution. Here is the strict 4-step incident response protocol you need to follow. Step 1, uninstall any 12.5.x builds immediately. Just get them off the machines. Step 2, run full EDR scans to hunt for any of those secondary payloads we talked about. Step 3, and I mean only if the software is strictly required for your business operations, go ahead and install the clean version 12.6.0.2455 from the official vendor. Step 4, if the infected machine handled any privileged access at all, you must rotate those exposed credentials immediately. Whatever you do, do not skip that last step. You know, we practice coordinated vulnerability disclosure because of this fundamental code. Users need to know to protect their systems. Silent threats, like these supply chain attacks, they totally erode the foundation of digital trust. As white hat researchers, dragging these exploits out into the light to force a vendor fix, it isn't about pointing fingers at anyone. It's simply about arming defenders with the unvarnished hard intelligence they need to protect the perimeter. It really is that simple. Supply chain attacks are pretty much the ultimate betrayal of trust in our digital infrastructure. I strongly urge you to audit your software verification processes and heavily restrict casual utilities on privileged workstations. Validate those hashes, rotate your secrets, and implement the blocks we've discussed today. Because honestly, if a trusted, digitally signed utility can slip past your defenses this silently, you've got to ask yourself, what else is quietly running in your admin vault right now? This concludes the advisory. Stay secure.